Hello, welcome to Hollywood Crime Scene. This is Rachel Fisher.
This is Desi Jetikin. Hi.
I'm ready for it.
So, first of all, I would like to say I'm sorry for the delay. Honestly, the tour was much more grueling than I anticipated.
Yeah.
I had no idea writing 9 additional shows
Dude.
would have been such a deterrent to me finishing this, but it was.
Look, the next time we go on tour, we discussed after the tour was over, like what we would have done differently in terms of like time management stuff and just logistics. So hopefully next time I think we'll have it a lot more figured out.
Right.
I'm
a Capricorn. I always take on too much.
I know.
So that's why it got delayed. And plus I was tired. Plus my laptop broke in the last leg of the tour and I had to deal with that. I couldn't write as easily without it. So that further delayed me. And then this is a bummer of an episode. So I was kind of like,
right.
On top of everything.
More bad news.
But we're finally here. We're going to finish our series on Jonestown. Once again, my main source is The Road to Jonestown by Jeff Gwynne. I also read a bunch of stuff on this website that's dedicated to Jonestown from SDSU. It has a ton of stuff, including PDFs of interviews, statements. It's jonestown.sdsu.edu. I listened and watched a lot of things, including the death tapes. I watched the video of the runway shooting. Like, there's video footage of that. So there's just so much information on this case. One of the fascinating things about it, I think, is just how much we know, which is unusual in these situations and kind of goes to show that even when you know a lot of stuff, it still doesn't make something like this any more understandable.
Right.
So let's get into it. Where we left off, after the scathing New West article comes out, the one I mentioned the last episode, where People's Temple members basically talk about the abuses they suffered, the out-of-control Jim Jones. Jones makes plans to leave the U.S. and go to Guyana, where he is establishing Jonestown, a safe haven for his temple. Just about 6 people live there at this point, and they're laboring daily to turn an untamed jungle into livable and usable farmland. Obviously, this is a very bonding experience for those pioneers who are kind of doing what seemed impossible. Of course, all of this is made easier by the lack of tattletales and Jim Jones, but all of that is about to change. In May of 1977, those numbers increased drastically as Jim starts pushing people to finally go to Jonestown. Sometimes dozens of people are arriving at once. Now, a major problem here is that there wasn't enough housing yet, which meant they had to stop all of the important work they were doing to create the farmland and start building. The residents were also older and needed more help, which further stalled progress. And then there's obviously the complaints that started happening as well, because this was not the tropical paradise that was promised. Many sort of figured if things didn't get better, they'd just go back to the U.S. After all, like everything, they always thought that was an option. But the experience and people were very pleasant in many ways despite these challenges. All of that changed, though, when Jim Jones arrived. Because of the controversy he had suffered in San Francisco, he definitely arrived with something to prove. Number one on that list was creating a self-sustaining socialist paradise with a lot of people involved. Let's just say the chill commune vibes were over, and once again, people were dealing with the controlling, drug-addicted maniac Jim Jones. And many of his personal defects that were easily hidden back in the U.S. were glaringly obvious in Guyana. One reason for that was that they had a sound system installed. This was connected to a microphone in his private cabin, and the sound system was everywhere. There were loudspeakers all over the property, so he could be heard ranting and rambling at all hours of the day. And it went from this peaceful existence there to kind of the 24/7 Jim Jones show.
I mean, you really do get to know someone when you go on vacation with them.
Absolutely.
I believe that.
Yeah, so he's just like, all of a sudden he'll just turn the mic on and start rambling all hours of the day.
He's like the original annoying podcaster.
Yeah. And when he wasn't rambling, music would be piped in. So it's like the Grove or Disneyland, where it's just like that constant. It's like, I need some quiet. I don't want that.
This sounds like hell on earth.
But it was mostly him, because when he was too inebriated or sick to physically preach, he would just play some of the hours and hours of tapes of him preaching instead. So if it like wasn't live or music, he's like, well, let's just do this old classic. After listening to him all day, he would then go to the Pavilion every night to listen to him live. He also began really controlling the narrative. All mail was confiscated and censored going in and out. He didn't want info going back and forth about the troubles in both areas. Like, he didn't want Jonestown to know what was going on in the States and vice versa. Cabins were overcrowded, so there was pretty much no privacy.
Where are they going to the bathroom?
Well, that's just basically outhouses and holes. I mean, they don't have plumbing.
This is a disaster.
Jim, of course, lives in much better quarters with Carolyn Layton, Maria Katsaris, and the two boys, John Victor, his son with Grace Doan, and Chemo, his son with Carolyn. Jones, of course, has a generator. He has a fridge, a fan, much more luxury. And everyone else, they don't even have toilet paper. They're using scrap paper to wipe with. And when that runs out, they use leaves, the classic. Classic desperation move. Now, Jonestown was initially sustained by the earnings of the People's Temple back in the States, who were really raking it in at some point with the goal of eventually becoming self-sustaining. All of that changed after the New West article came out. Donations plummeted and debt started piling up. The people in Jonestown actually started making toys to sell at local markets. People who had full-time jobs in the U.S. were not invited down since they needed the income, and that was more important than having them in Guyana. When new arrivals did come, anything they had of value was taken to sell, and they were literally left with just the clothes on their backs. More sinister, everyone's passports were taken and kept under close guard by Jim Jones. People would soon feel very trapped and dependent on him. Another big problem was food. By the time Jonestown reached about 900 people, it was very expensive to feed them, and they weren't growing food because they didn't have any fucking farmland that was working. Meals eventually ended up being rice with just specks of meat in it. To drink, Flavor Aid. That's where the Flavor Aid started coming in. It was all they could afford.
They can't even get the name brand.
They can't even get Kool-Aid. Jones would dole out a weekly cookie to each follower as a treat. I would have been living for Cookie Day.
Cookie Day would have been so exciting.
I would have been like eating little nibbles, trying to save it. I'm so sad right now. Oh my God. So after the New West article came out, discipline in the People's Temple did change. Rule breakers were no longer beat. They were basically made into pariahs, something enforced by the learning crew. No one was to look or speak to them, and they were to run whenever they had to go back and forth between places at all times. So if they went to the bathroom, they had to run. If they went to the field, they had to run. I'd be so irritated.
Is this like some kind of PE punishment?
I guess. They were also made to sleep on the floor of a mud hut. Their one outing was to attend this nightly meeting at the Pavilion, which was an open-air structure and will one day be the site featured prominently in pictures of the aftermath of the tragedy. So it wasn't long before the backbreaking labor and primitive living conditions was too much for people to bear, and some people wanted to bail. Now, although the temple would pay for the expenses for people to come down there, it did not pay the expenses to leave, and this put many people in a bind since they had already handed over all of their assets when they arrived. It was just incredibly difficult for financial reasons, but then there's also the social peer pressure reasons. It was just very scary to admit that you wanted to leave and try to make it happen. A few, however, did manage to leave, including one woman named Yolanda Crawford. Not only did she have to pay expenses back, but she also had to agree to other things in order to leave, including never speaking poorly about the People's Temple when she was back, or she would lose her protection, she was told. She also had to sign incriminating statements that would be handed over to the authorities if she did talk, basically things like admitting to crimes.
Right.
He's done this before. One man actually ran into the jungle basically to get out, like an Irish goodbye. He didn't go out the front door. And this is a really scary way to do it.
Yeah.
Because the jungle is like serious jungle.
Yeah.
This is like wild animals, poisonous snakes.
This is undeveloped land, not to mention scary bugs.
Yeah. So he was actually able to make his way to the U.S. Counsel's office in Georgetown and get help of the U.S. Counsel, Richard McCoy, who got him home and then established with Jim Jones that anyone who wanted to leave would not only be facilitated with that process, but the trip back would be paid for by the temple.
Wow.
So McCoy even goes to Jonestown at this point and speaks to people to kind of suss it out. And everyone he spoke to did not want to leave, and he took their word for it. So right now we have 900 or so people at Jonestown, and it's a third elderly pensioners, a third are babies and children, and a third are basically the ones doing all the work, the adults in their prime, older teenagers. So Jim always lived in fear of more people not wanting to deal with this grueling lifestyle because obviously financial and passport reasons were no longer a barrier to escaping Jonestown anymore. He really upped the other ways to keep people in. As I said before in episodes, many people have extended family in the temple, so leaving would mean leaving behind loved ones, possibly leaving behind close friends, and he would use that as a threat. He also made them feel like a traitor to the cause if they even pondered leaving, like the cause of socialism and all of that kind of stuff. And then, as I mentioned, he had this physical barrier as well, the jungle, which was full of snakes and jungle cats. Not me trying to pet a jungle cat. Come here. Even if you attempted to go through the jungle, it wasn't likely you would get very far because he had enforcers who would catch up to you very quickly. So many just stayed, some becoming convinced it was actually the best option after listening to his propaganda at the nightly meetings, speaking of all the powerful entities conspiring against them, including the media, the CIA, the FBI, and the Guyanese government. So they were worried if they left, the people who got them might actually do worse things to them.
Yeah.
But little did they know that a much more lethal adversary group was forming. And unlike the threats Jim spoke about, they actually had the explicit goal of taking Jim Jones down once and for all. And that was a group of former members and family members of current members who will become known as the concerned relatives.
Oh, wow.
So
these are family members and...
It's ex-members and then family members of people at Jonestown.
Oh, my God.
I believe we spoke about this group when I covered that case a while ago. It's like people connected to the People's Temple who were murdered.
Yes.
I think they were with that group, too, as well.
What was that episode?
Oh, my God. We should link to it because it's connected to Jonestown. And it was a murder that seems random, but was it? Like, it possibly has connections to them talking. Anyway, I'll find the link for it. So one major thing the New West article did, other than expose Jim Jones and the People's Temple, is it showed that the members who spoke out about the abuses actually didn't suffer the consequences Jones threatened them with. This gave more people the courage to speak out, and this group of people began meeting and coming up with a strategy for publicizing what was happening without facing media fatigue or backlash.
So these are people in San Francisco?
Yes, pretty much.
Because they have access to the news and stuff.
Yeah, this is people in the States. So they might not all be in San Francisco, but it's kind of centered there.
Right.
So while property and money theft was obviously criminal, it wasn't nearly as compelling as their chosen focus to take Jim down, which were things like Grace Stowen's custody battle and parents wanting to get their children back or people trying to get their parents back. Because remember, there's a lot of elderly people there.
Yeah.
They had minimal contact with people in Guyana. And what contact they did have was often people just asking for money. And occasionally disturbing info would slip through, including the fact that numerous parents of young women on the compound, these young women told them that they were all engaged to the Jonestown Dr. Larry Schacht. So it was like dozens of young women were like, I'm engaged to him. So they're like, wait, what? How many people is he?
Yeah.
It was crazy. So these kind of stories not only got people's attention, but kept them invested, in particular, the child custody battle between Grace Stowen and Jim Jones. Now, Grace had an unlikely supporter in her quest ex-husband and ex-Temple bigwig Tim Stoen. After filing the custody case in San Francisco, Jim almost immediately began collecting affidavits from Temple members accusing Grace of not only physically abusing John Victor, but also sexually abusing him, as well as several foster kids at the Temple, saying things like her hugs sometimes appeared a little too sexual. Now, John Victor was being called Godchild on the compound, which gave this custody battle even more urgency. Like, we can't lose our Godchild. Like, he was almost sort of being groomed to be the next leader.
Yeah.
Even though he's literally under 10. Jim also brought into the mix the document that Tim signed long ago, I talked about in episode 2, I think, stating that he had begged Jim to impregnate his wife. But Tim is still legally the dad. He's on the birth certificate. Now, Grace at the time, same time as this custody battle, is finally getting around to divorcing Tim Stoen. They're separated. In the divorce case, she's granted custody of John Victor. So John Victor was basically granted permission to be taken to Guyana by Jim through a written statement by Tim that was notarized. This is basically null and voided by the court decision because he doesn't have the right to give this child. I don't know why they sent him down there, but that's a whole other story. But basically, this was really bad for Jim since he had done that same thing with numerous other children who were now under his guardianship. And this might set a precedent for people to legally get them back as well.
Yeah.
Which in turn would destroy a primary motivating factor for many adults at the compound, which was protecting children from the horror of a capitalistic world hell-bent on destroying them. So a lot of these adults were like, we're here for kids, the next generation, even if it wasn't their own children. But it's wild to me how many parents just let their kids go down there without them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's far.
That's very far. I mean, they must have been brainwashed.
I mean, to sign your rights over to your kid like that, he gave them, basically a lot of them gave him power of attorney.
Oh my God.
To make decisions for them down there.
I mean, there were a lot of kids down there.
A lot of kids were even born down there. There was babies.
Yeah.
I know. So, I mean, many of them were with their parents, but there were
some.
And some of them are foster kids that he took down.
My God.
So then Grace did something that sent Jim into a total panic. Now, obviously, she had obtained a court order for the boy to be returned to the U.S., but Jim basically ignored anything issued by a U.S. court. So Grace took it to Guyana and got an order for the boy to be returned to her in that country. Her lawyer, Jeffrey Haas, actually goes to the gates of Jonestown and posts notices for Jim that he has to show up for this court date. But Jim and John Victor are nowhere to be seen during this first attempt. When Jim finds out they'll be returning, he basically preps everyone for battle. He speaks to Marceline saying everyone is willing to die for the cause and are prepared to die in battle, which sends her into a panic thinking Jim is planning some kind of possible suicide event. She remains in contact with him via ham radio, kind of talking him off the edge. And this attempt to gain physical custody of John Victor will result in the first White Night, which is what settlers would come to call Joan summoning everyone for a sudden life-threatening crisis. And this will often include run-throughs of mass suicide. What will they do when people finally come for them?
Oh my God.
So much like in the past, Joan kind of fakes an assassination attempt, making it seem like snipers have infiltrated the area and that they're being surrounded by these government forces. The reality is it's one of his sons doing the shooting, and Jones actually has his security fire a hail of bullets back towards his son, who literally could have died. Because they're just shooting into the jungle and the surrounding area. The camp is now on lockdown with everyone thinking they are being surrounded, and they're in such a panic. They're really prepared to die for this cause. This lasts for 6 days that he tricks them into thinking that they're being surrounded and about to die.
This guy sucks so hard.
He's awful. Haas does return, but he kind of retreats when he seems like it's clear this is not something he can do on his own. He goes back to the U.S. In Jim's mind, his adversaries are more numerous than ever, and it's grown to international in scope now. He begins acting accordingly, including trying to move Jonestown, reaching out to the governments of Cuba, Albania, North Korea, and the USSR.
North Korea.
He's trying it all.
He's trying everybody.
He's like, they'll take us. But more and more, it's looking like the last stand will have to take place in Guyana. Because these countries, I don't even think most of them respond to him. But the ones who do, it's kind of like, nah, like that's not happening.
You got how many people? You got you got 900 people?
Right. So after this 6-day siege, security is amped up to the point where residents actually feel scared of their supposed protectors. Now, representatives from both Guyana and the U.S. were constantly visiting and monitoring the situation there. The current concerned relatives were also doing their due diligence, contacting representatives in the State Department constantly. The problem was when people would visit the compound, the residents would all be like, we're happy, and no one seemed trapped there, which in many cases was obviously a lie because Jim was putting on a presentation when these tours would happen, and the concerned relatives felt very frustrated, like their concerns weren't being taken seriously.
And they could tell that their loved ones
It doesn't really matter in this situation if someone's like, we're happy.
It's not a good situation.
Yeah. Like, it's like, yeah, they're brainwashed or they're drugged or they're something. Like,
yeah, or they're scared.
If you see a young girl in an old gross guy's car and they're like, I'm fine. It's like, how do you know they're not being threatened in some way or their family? It's like,
yeah,
you don't know what's going on. But that is until Representative Leo Ryan once again became involved. He was already planning an official congressional inquiry into the group and was convinced something nefarious was going on. So we'll take a break here and we'll get back to more after the break. So another continuing thorn in Jim's side was Tim Stoen, who was now actively involved in the custody issue. This worried Jim because Jim knew more than anyone what Jim knew more than anyone what Tim was capable of legally because Tim had been his legal guru and Inner Circle member for so long. Jim got writer Herb Caen to publish an expose stating that Jim Jones was the actual father of John Victor. He also resorted to some other long-used tactics to kind of humiliate Tim. He sent Tim gay porn in his name as if he had subscribed to it to his house. Like, haha,
right.
Foiled again. And he also publicly accused him of dunking on the Guyanese prime minister. Like that was going to start some kind of like feud between them.
Right.
He's on a lot of drugs at this time. He's not really thinking clearly.
He's not doing his best.
He's not his best sicko work. When all of that fails, obviously, Jim tries to bribe him. He offers him $5,000 initially, and then he's like, I'll up it to $10,000 if he drops this custody suit. And he refuses, and Jim apparently says to people, oh, wow, he's principled now? Like... How dare he? But Grace and Tim Stoen weren't the only parents trying to get their children back from Jones. Another set of parents were trying to revoke the power of attorney they gave Jones over their 2 teen sons. And Stephen Katasaris was trying to get his child Maria back. I mean, she's an adult, so he's good luck with that at that point. But this is just a nonstop shit show for Jim at this point. Marceline finally joins her husband in Guyana, and honestly, it's like she's one of the only people this is a good thing for because she actually is back in her element, providing guidance. And she's also giving out much needed medical care because she actually was a nurse.
Yeah.
When Jones failed to return John Victor by the court-ordered date, the extradition process was inquired into. It was reported that the key person helping to make this happen was Congressman Leo Ryan.
God, this is so stressful because I'm just in my head, I'm like, hurry up.
I know.
Hurry up.
And Jones, he finally becomes aware of Leo Ryan sort of being involved in this with this concerned relatives group. And this makes Leo Ryan his most dangerous adversary at this point in time. As extradition seems to be looming, Jim truly falls apart. In one of his nightly meetings, he collapses, and then he tells the congregation they might have to abandon Guyana and move to Russia, telling them to start learning Russian. And they were upset because they had invested so much blood, sweat, and tears building Jonestown, and they were confused why they would just be bailing and not fighting.
And what about the weather?
Yeah. What about the weather? What are we going to farm there? But later, speaking to his inner circle, he basically confided that they weren't moving. All of the attempts to contact other governments regarding the move had failed, and it was time to begin exploring the most expedient way of committing a long alluded to act. Schacht suggested some kind of germicidal infection. A woman named Phyllis suggested just shooting everyone. And Jones said he preferred poison. Now, since the first White Night, a common theme of Jim's rantings was this idea that an outside force would be coming in with the goal of killing everyone in Jonestown. Rather than allow them to do that, they would take their own lives, robbing their enemies of this win. So this would be their last act of rebellion. He did another dry run, much like he did in the Bay Area that time with the Planning Commission, forcing everyone into a panic that they were surrounded and they were about to be killed, getting them to drink this poison, only to be told 45 minutes later that it was nothing.
Oh my God.
He did this so many times that people truly didn't believe it would ever really happen.
Oh no.
I feel like someone might have said that he did this kind of 80 times.
So there was like at least one person. I mean, there was like people on the day that were like, "Oh, this is another test."
They're survivors, so we know some information about what people were thinking.
Yeah.
So on that day, even they're like, "Nope, it's another fake out." Like,
right.
So Jones had always wondered if his followers would obey his request to commit suicide, and now he knew it came to that. If it came to that, they would be able to leave with this grand gesture because everyone always followed along and did it. No longer was it a matter of if, it was now a matter of when. After this particular White Night, he told Larry Schacht to order 1 pound of sodium cyanide, enough for 1,800 fatal doses.
Now, where are you going to get that from?
Well, he actually had a license to be like a diamond, whatever.
A diamond?
Manufacturer or something like that, or a jeweler. And I think cyanide is used to clean gold.
He's like, I need a lot of it.
Yeah. So he ordered, they did it in increments, but they did it a lot.
Right.
But the 1,800 fatal doses of cyanide, after all is said and done, only cost $8.85.
What?
That's how much it
Total?
cost. Yeah. That's how much it costs for that many doses.
That seems too cheap.
Yeah, they can raise their prices a little. I think we should make it a little harder to get.
It should definitely be a little harder to get cyanide.
I mean, probably is now, but so after this event, this sort of last White Night, Jones had his followers all write how they would respond if they were to know it was truly the last White Night. Many said they wanted to go out fighting. Some were despondent that after working so hard, they would all die anyway. And many said they would like to put the children to sleep first, or were upset about the idea of killing them at all. Some said they were beginning to think they were just loyalty tests and nothing would ever come of them. Jones began to lose his divinity in the eyes of many, too, due to his increasing health issues. He was always sweating. He was really bloated, so bloated that he actually had to be sent larger shirts from San Francisco. He was always complaining of aches and pains, and everyone was like, what happened to the healer?
This guy's a wreck.
Can he heal himself? As more heat was coming their way from the concerned relatives in the State Department, more visitors were allowed in to see all the glory and report back that everything was great. When some visitors went back to Georgetown after their trip, they were escorted by Debbie Layton, Carolyn's sister, which was a common procedure to send someone back with the group. But this time, after dropping off the visitors, she went to Richard McCoy, the U.S. consul. She said she wanted protection and a safe return to the U.S. She also signed a statement that Jones was planning a mass suicide at Jonestown, talking about how on at least 2 occasions during White Nights, after a revolutionary suicide vote was reached, a simulated mass suicide was rehearsed. In an affidavit, she said, everyone, including the children, were told to line up. As we passed through the line, we were given a small glass of red liquid to drink. We were told that the liquid contained poison and that we would die within 45 minutes. We all did as we were told. When the time came when we should have dropped dead, Reverend Jones explained that the poison was not real and that we had just been through a loyalty test. He warned us that the time was not far off when it would become necessary for us to die by our own hands. Jones would have these drills screaming, "Alert, alert, alert," over the community loudspeaker to call the community together in the central pavilion. Armed guards with guns and crossbows would then surround the pavilion, and it was unclear if this was protection or to keep them from leaving. So, needless to say, this was a very dangerous defection because almost no one knew more about the inner workings of the temple and Jonestown than Debbie Layton. She was one of the only higher-ups who was actually there and left. Now Tim Stoen started filing a barrage of multi-million-dollar lawsuits against Jones, including one for libel by Maria Katsaris' father because Jones had accused him of sexually abusing his daughter. In theory, Jones could have returned to the U.S. to defend himself, but he had no intention of doing that. And when Tim said he would stop the legal barrage if Jones returned John Victor, that was a nope too. For now, he relied on the fact that the Guyanese government seemed like they weren't enforcing anything and he could kind of get away with this. Now, although Debbie was initially quiet publicly, just speaking to authorities, eventually she spills the beans about everything in a salacious expose, detailing the finances of the temple, the continued abuses, and the mass suicide run-throughs. Jones somehow became even more unhinged, relying on drugs constantly, but not just for himself. There was now a hut called the Extended Care Hut, and any settlers who were determined to be trouble were sent there and sedated. One man named Gene Chikas defected, but his wife and children were still at Jonestown. He agreed to return to talk things out with them and was immediately sedated and confined to this unit.
Shit.
He continued to be sedated with barbiturates that were stuffed into cheese sandwiches that were given to him anytime he became coherent or contrary. When Jones became interested in a 19-year-old woman named Shonda Oliver, Shonda wasn't interested when he made a move on her, and Jones drugged her and kept her drugged in the extended care unit where he basically used her as a sex slave. So, as if things couldn't get worse, the Guyanese government was now demanding the Jonestown doctor Larry Schacht attend formal medical school and be licensed. He wasn't a doctor. He was a former drug addict that Jim took in and cured and was like, you'll be the temple doctor.
You know a lot about drugs.
He sent him to medical school like briefly, but he didn't finish. He wasn't licensed. And Jim, like, the Guyanese government was finally like, hold up, like, this can't happen. He needs to get a license. And Jim was like, that can't happen because I need this man around if and when we do that suicide, because he's my go-to guy.
Well, he didn't tell the government that.
No. But that wasn't going to happen. He couldn't be gone from Jonestown. So that was just another pressure on him. Like, fuck, what am I going to do? Now, mild complaints and disobedience, which in the past would have been punished, were now placated as he struggled to maintain control over the flock. There was one woman who demanded more meat. Some teens built a makeshift basketball court without permission, which they would have normally gotten in trouble for. And he's like losing it. Soon he gave his meat portion to the woman complaining. This is in August of 1978. He sort of like panics and he announces to everyone that he has terminal lung cancer.
Is that true?
It's not true. So Marceline is like, what? How do you know this? And he's like, Larry Schacht diagnosed me. And she's like, how? She's like, we should get a second opinion. She actually brings in a doctor friend of hers because Jim, of course, refuses to go to a hospital. And this guy's like, look, it's not cancer as best I can tell, but it's probably a fungal infection that's easily treated with antibiotics. That's like my best guess. And no one at Jonestown is told that it wasn't actually cancer. He continues to use this to manipulate and garner sympathy, and he's not giving that up when he needs it most. So by the end of September 1978, he falls in with some right-wing conspiracy theorists. He retains the legal services of Mark Lane and Donald Freed, who are both Kennedy assassination conspiracy theorists. He's using them to help make this case of a grand conspiracy by U.S. intelligence agencies against his temple. He tells Lane that he wants to pull an Eldridge Cleaver, return to the U.S. after repairing his reputation. And in September of 1978, Lane speaks to the residents of Jonestown, providing support for his theories and comparing him to Martin Luther King Jr.
Again?
Yes. He then holds a press conference. Lane, the lawyer, holds a press conference stating that none of the charges against the temple are accurate or true. There's a massive conspiracy against the temple by intelligence organizations, naming the CIA, the FBI, and the U.S. Postal Service. I should throw them in too.
Yeah.
Now, Jones tries to act like Lane is like just doing this for the love of the game, but he's actually paying him $6,000 a month to not only represent him legally, but to generate more conspiracy theories. So these conspiracy theorists are for hire. They're like, we'll come up with some shit.
Yeah.
And there is a lot, I didn't get too far down the rabbit hole, but there's a lot of Jonestown conspiracies, including some people who think that Jonestown was an MK Ultra experiment.
Oh, wow.
It's always an MK Ultra.
It's always an MK Ultra experiment.
So an even bigger problem, though, was on the horizon for Jones. He had no clue yet that it was happening, but Congressman Leo Ryan was finally making good to the concerned relatives, and he was going to fly down to Guyana himself and inspect Jonestown. So at some point, Jones does get informed that he's coming, and he immediately begins preparing for the visit. It's later reported and verified by audio tapes recovered by investigators that Jones had run rehearsals on how to convince Ryan's delegation that everyone was happy and in good spirits. On November 14th, 1978, Ryan flew to Georgetown with his delegation. This included Jackie Speier, other government officials, numerous reporters and photojournalists, as well as a contingency representing the concerned relatives, including Tim and Grace Stoen and Stephen Katsaris. Initially, they are denied access, but Jonestown acquiesces when Ryan informs them he's coming regardless of whether they want him to or not. On the morning of November 17th, the group fly from Georgetown to the airstrip at Port Katuma, where they will be escorted to Jonestown. Grace and Tim Stoen and two other concerned relatives stay behind because there wasn't enough room. But people also were kind of like, maybe Tim and Grace showing up is a little too inflammatory right now. So they kind of choose to leave them behind. Only Ryan and Spear are initially accepted into Jonestown, while the rest of his group is allowed in after sunset. That night, they attend a musical reception in the settlement's main pavilion, and they're just having this big old party. Look how great it is.
Did they eat the food?
You know what? I didn't see that, but I wonder what they served. I bet you they pulled out all the meat.
They pulled out, they got all the good stuff they had. They got the cookies.
They got the cookies out. They probably went to that market to get the fruit again.
Right.
They did the whole shebang.
Because that'd be the first thing I'd ask. I say, open your fridge, open the pantries.
Absolutely.
Let's see what you're feeding these people.
And this is where the people were like, wait, he's been hoarding all that good stuff in his fridge, probably.
Yeah.
So the party is being received very warmly. People are having a good time. But Jim keeps going back into private rooms, and he's like losing it during this. He's like, I feel like I'm dying. He starts ranting about the government conspiracies and martyrdom. He is talking about attacks by the press. So he's like barely holding it together during this whole thing. But then things start going off plan. Two temple members, Vernon Gosney and Monica Bagby, make the first move for defection that night. In the pavilion, Gosney mistook NBC reporter Don Harris for Rep. Ryan and passes him a note reading, "Dear Congressman, please help us get out of Jonestown." Now, a child nearby witnesses this act and alerts other temple members.
A spider.
It's like
Varys.
It's like Varys, or I was thinking like in The Sound of Music, Liesl's boyfriend.
Yeah.
That was creepy. I was like, dude, that kid needs his butt spanked.
That's so...
What a narc.
That's so dark.
And Harris brings these notes to Ryan, and another note that he gets. According to Jackie Spear, in an interview in 2006, she said reading the notes caused her and the congressman to realize that something was very, very wrong there.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Ryan and Spear and 2 Guyanese officials stay the night in Jonestown while other members of the delegation go back to Port Kaituma and stay at a small cafe. In the early morning of November 18th, 11 temple members, sensing danger enough that they walk out of Jonestown all the way to Matthews Ridge, which is in the opposite direction of Port Kaituma. So they're also just defecting on their own. That afternoon, the Parks and Bogue families, along with sort of de facto family members Christopher O'Neill and Harold Cordell, step forward and ask to be escorted out of Jonestown by the Ryan delegation. Jones's adopted son, Johnny, attempts to talk them out of leaving, and Jerry Parks says to him, "No way, it's nothing but a communist prison camp." Jones gives the 2 families permission to leave, as well as the other 2 who wrote the letters the night before. But before leaving, they're forced to sign a statement stating that they will leave, Ghazni will leave his 4-year-old son behind of his own free will. He says that Jones says the defectors are lying and they just want to destroy Jonestown. And emotional scenes start developing between family members at this point because people want to leave, but their wife or husband don't.
Oh, God.
One man named Al Simon, he attempts to take 2 of his children to Ryan for transfer back to the United States. And his wife, Bonnie, is summoned on the loudspeakers, and she denounces her husband in front of everybody.
On the loudspeakers?
She's just kind of told to come on the loudspeaker, and she shows up and denounces him.
Yeah.
He pleads with her to he leaves and he pleads with her to come as well, but she refuses and she stays.
Oh my God.
While most of the Ryan delegation began to depart on a large dump truck back to the Port Kaituma airstrip, Ryan and a member from the Guyana U.S. Embassy stay behind in Jonestown to process any additional defectors. Shortly before the dump truck left, a temple loyalist named Larry Layton, who is the brother of Debbie Layton, and Carolyn Layton, he said that he also wants to defect, and several defectors voiced their suspicions about what his real motive is. So initially they had chartered a 19-passenger plane back to Georgetown, but because of the defectors, they needed a second plane. When the entourage reaches the airstrip between 4:30 and 4:45, the planes had not yet appeared as scheduled, so the group wait around until the aircraft finally land. Then there's a further delay because a random heavy rainstorm happens.
This is so stressful.
Yeah, they're trying to get out of there. I mean,
Dude.
I can't imagine how fucking stressful it is, especially for the people, the defectors who actually know everything that's going on.
That's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean?
Like, I'm stressed for the defectors, especially.
Yeah. So then the boarding process finally begins. Now, Larry Layton ends up being on a passenger on the Cessna. This is the first aircraft to set up for takeoff. After the Cessna has taxied to the far end of the airstrip, a tractor with a trailer attached drives by, holding members of the temple's Red Brigade security squad.
No.
So they arrive at the airstrip and approach the other plane. When the tractor nears about 30 feet of the aircraft, Larry on his Cessna produces a handgun and starts shooting at the passengers.
From the plane?
In the plane. He's shooting at the people on the plane with him. He wounds 3 before being disarmed. At the same time, someone yells, "Hit the ground!" and the Red Brigade opens fire with shotguns, handguns, rifles, while at least 2 shooters are circling the plane on foot. There was an estimated 9 shooters. The first few seconds of the shooting are captured on videotape by NBC cameraman Bob Brown, who was killed instantly at some point during the filming. He's killed along with Greg Robinson, Sherwin Harris, and a temple defector named Patricia Parks. They all die within the first few minutes of the shooting starting, as well as Congressman Leo Ryan, who was killed after being shot more than 20 times. Now, Jackie Spear, Stephen Sung, Richard Dwyer, Tim Reiterman, Charles Kraus, Ron Javers, Anthony Katsaris, Carolyn Houston Boyd, and Beverly Oliver were the 9 injured and around the plane. After the shootings, the pilots and co-pilots, as well as the injured Monica Bagme, she's a defector, fled in the Cessna to Georgetown. The damaged plane couldn't fly. The engine was like shot up or something like that. And the injured Ryan delegation members are just left on the airstrip. 5 people will die at the airstrip. Now, ironically, I also wanted to say that Larry Layton, the guy who snuck in saying he was also defecting, he thought that he was going to get on the plane with Leo Ryan. He didn't know there would be 2 planes because so much changed in those last few hours.
Yeah.
And he got put on the Cessna without Ryan. So his plan was that he would get on the plane with Ryan and shoot the pilot and the whole plane would crash. So that didn't end up happening.
But he did shoot people.
Yes. He kind of had to wing it.
But that was the plane that managed to leave.
Yes, because a Cessna is a very small plane. This was only holding like a few people. So they were able to stop him.
Dude, your phone.
Sorry.
It's like nonstop.
It's fucking Discord. I don't know how to turn the notification. My phone is new as well, and I haven't adjusted things. So ironically, before leaving Jonestown, Ryan had told Charles Gary, one of Jim's lawyers, that he would issue a report that would basically describe Jonestown in good terms. He stated that none of the 60 relatives he had targeted for interviews wanted to leave. The 14 defectors constitute a very small portion of Jonestown's residents, and that the sense of imprisonment the defectors had was likely because of peer pressure and a lack of physical transportation. He said that he was like, I'll say it's a beautiful place you have here. Charles Gary goes back to Jones with this information and he's like, I have failed. He's like, all is lost. So he hears this kind of good news, I guess, and is immediately still despondent. Now that this assassination plan has been set in motion for Jim, so back at the camp, they immediately start this suicide the minute the trucks kind of pull off. Because they know this assassination is happening. And once that happens, there's no going back.
That they've killed all these people.
Yeah, that's the end.
Right.
Like, once they kill this congressman, the shit has hit the fan.
Right.
And the government's going to come in and do something.
Right.
So they had to work fast before word got out what happened at the airstrip.
Oh, God. This part of the story, I mean, like, there's this... It kills me because it's like it just feels like they were so close.
I know.
They were so close.
Yeah.
It's so devastating.
It's shocking. So Marceline makes a broadcast on the public address system telling everyone everything's all right, return to your homes. But during this time, aides prepare a large metal tub with grape flavor aid and poisoned it with an antihistamine, an allergy medicine, an antipsychotic medicine, an anti-malaria drug, sedatives, Valium, and cyanide. I don't know why they need it all, but that's what they did.
Shouldn't the cyanide just do the job?
I guess they were just throwing everything into the mix.
Yeah.
And there's pictures of just empty bottles of shit.
That is sick.
About 30 minutes after Marceline makes her announcement, Jim Jones makes his own announcement calling all members to the pavilion. So as mentioned, and probably many people listening know, there is a 44-minute cassette tape known as the death tape, recording part of the meeting Jones called inside the pavilion in the early evening of November 18th, 1978. When the assembly gathered, referring to Ryan's delegation air travel, they're traveling back to Georgetown, he tells them, one of those people on that plane is going to shoot the pilot. I know that. I didn't plan it, but I know it's going to happen. Sorry. They're going to shoot that pilot and down comes the plane into the jungle. And we had better not have any of our children left when it's over because they'll parachute in here on us. Now, parroting his prior statements that hostile forces would convert captured children to fascism, one Temple member states on the tape, the ones that they take captured, they're going to just let them grow up and be dummies. On the tape, he urges Temple members to commit revolutionary suicide. Such an act has been planned, obviously, by the Temple before. And Jonestown defectors said that he would say, you can go down in history saying you chose your own way to go. It is your commitment to refuse capitalism and in support of socialism. When the Red Brigade members come back to Jonestown after the murders, Tim Carter, a Vietnam War vet, recalls them having a 1,000-year stare of weary soldiers. After that, Jones is able to confirm that the congressman was dead, and he announces it to the pavilion, and no dissent is heard on the death tape. Like, no one seemed upset by this news. By this point, armed guards had taken up positions surrounding the pavilion. Directly after this, he states that the Red Brigades had just showed them justice. Several other temple members give speeches praising Jim Jones and his decision for the community to commit suicide. Even after Jones stopped having this praise, he's like, stop the praise, and he starts begging for the process to go faster. He's like, let's get it going. Enough praise. Even the narcissist had enough. According to an escaped temple member named Odell Rhodes, the first to take the poison were Rouletta Paul and her 1-year-old infant. A syringe without a needle fitted was used to squirt poison into the baby's mouth, after which she squirted another syringe into her mouth. Stanley Clayton, another survivor, witnessed mothers also syringing their babies from the tub. So they would just syringe from the tub. It wasn't like cups like people always sort of, I think.
They think these like Dixie cups.
Yes. He said that Jones was walking around to people, encouraging them to drink the poison. And after adults began seeing the poison take effect, they started showing a little reluctance to die, obviously. Now, the poison caused death within 5 minutes for children, less for babies, and an estimated 20 to 30 for adults. After consuming the poison, according to one witness, people were then escorted away down a wooden walkway outside the pavilion. And this is where this same witness said that a lot of people were like, is this another rehearsal? Like, what's going on? So in response to reactions of seeing the poison take effect, Jones counseled people to die with dignity, lay down your life with dignity, don't cry and don't show agony. He's like, I don't care how many screams you hear. I don't care how many anguish cries. Death is 1,000,000 times preferable to 10 more days of this life. If you knew it was ahead of you, you'd be glad you were stepping over tonight. Survivors describe a scene of hysteria and confusion as stuff starts happening. Like, obviously the children are dying first, and that's horrifying to see. Some people are just like waiting for their turn, sort of resigned. Others are walking around like they're in a trance, not knowing what to do. Tim Carter, one of the survivors, has suggested that day's lunch of grilled cheese sandwiches was probably already poisoned with sedatives to kind of get them in a state where they would be more accepting of this. And as I mentioned, this crowd is surrounded by armed guards. Right. So there is this feeling of like death by poison or being shot. Obviously, the death tape is horrifying to listen to because you hear kids crying and it's like, it's awful. And death by cyanide is not peaceful as well. Like, it's not a good way to go. It's basically slowly suffocating, and the last few minutes is horrifying. So these people are seeing people gasp for air, having convulsions, and often vomiting before slipping into unconsciousness. So just before the start of the final meeting in the pavilion, the two lawyers, Gary and Lane, were told that people were angry at them. They were sent back to this house, and they actually were like, we need to get the fuck out of here. And they walked past two armed guards into the jungle, eventually arriving in Port Katuma. They said while they were leaving the settlement in the jungle, they did hear gunshots. Tim Carter and several men got out by convincing Jones to let them leave so they could assassinate Tim Stowen. This was just a lie.
Right.
But sadly, Tim Carter went back to find his wife and child to take them, and he saw his wife holding his dead child, frothy foam at her mouth and tears running down her cheeks. So it was too late for them. Two more people who were intended to be poisoned managed to survive. Grover Davis, 79. He was hard of hearing and he missed the announcement to assemble on the loudspeaker.
Oh my God.
And he laid down in a ditch and pretended to be dead at some point.
Oh my God.
Hyacinth Thrash, she was 76, realized what was happening and crawled under her bed and walked out after the poisonings were complete. Jim Jones Jr. and his other son, Stephen Jones, were actually in Georgetown for a basketball tournament. Stephen Jones said, November 18th, when I received the call from my father, I actually spoke to him, and he said, we're going to visit Mr. Frazier. Now, that was their code doing the suicide. So he knew exactly what that meant. And he said, my first reaction was, there's got to be a different way, Dad. We've got to do something different. And he said, his dad said, no, you need to be strong. You need to be our avenging angels. Now, some people believe that Stephen was supposed to commit suicide. Everyone in Georgetown was supposed to commit suicide because there was also a center there, as well as he was supposed to instruct people in San Francisco at the other sort of temples to also commit suicide that day. And there's definitely debate about this, but many people think that Stephen Jones did stop the suicides of members in the U.S. Now, as more people died at Jonestown or were in the process of dying, the guards themselves were eventually called in to die by poison. All in all, it took 4 hours to complete the mass murder-suicide. 909 people died at Jonestown, 907 of cyanide poisoning, 2, including Jim Jones, of gunshot wounds. 5 died at the airstrip. And in Georgetown, a loyal member got the signal and slit the throat of her 3 children and herself. No. So that is 918 total. Now, Jones was found dead lying next to his chair in the pavilion between 2 other bodies, his head cushioned by a pillow. His death, I mentioned, was gunshot wound to his left temple. The other gunshot victim was a woman named Annie Moore, and it's presumed that she was the one who killed Jones, although I did see another report that said it was self-inflicted. But she basically is the last one to die. She wrapped up business, making sure everyone was dead, injecting more just to make sure. Many people had needle marks, so not everyone took the cyanide through their mouth. Some were injected with it, probably by force. She then wrote a suicide note before shooting herself. In the note, she wrote, "We died because you would not let us live." Now, meanwhile, this is so awful. There's like a whole group of people in Georgetown who didn't go on this trip because there wasn't room, like the Stowens and other family members. And they're waiting for them to come back still.
Oh, my God.
And then, of course, the horrors of what happened, at least at the airfield, start to trickle in. They still don't know what happened at Jonestown. So the survivors on the airstrip had to wait until the next day to be rescued.
Oh my God.
These people were shot and like lying there on the airstrip waiting for people to help them.
Oh my God.
No one knew yet what had transpired at Jonestown. The few survivors who were hiding at Jonestown spoke of the commune being eerily quiet with no movement until the scavengers came in from the jungle to feast.
Oh.
Can you imagine being there with all those dead bodies hiding? I would have fucking fainted and died
900 bodies.
And you hear the animals coming in. I mean, this is a horror show.
It's
I don't know.
Crazy.
Those people, my God, they must have had nightmares the rest of their lives. So as info slowly leaks out, this story obviously is huge fucking news.
Yeah.
Government officials and investigators begin the overwhelming process of identifying remains, dealing with those remains. Like, what do you even do?
They're in the middle of the jungle.
This is like crazy. And as the number of the dead grow, the horror of it all was almost too much to comprehend. Like, people were just like, what? Like, it doesn't seem real.
It doesn't.
Jim Jones was gone, though, and so was his church. So obviously, this story still fascinates people to this day. And much to the dismay of some, it launched the catchphrase, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid," into the world. And I didn't realize people have issues with that. Like, they don't like it. And obviously, a lot of people love it's like the correction, too. It's actually Flavor Aid. Like,
oh, but you mean people don't like it because of the obviously dark origin?
Yeah, some people think it's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Because it's often used to mock someone for believing something stupid, right? Like,
right, or that you think is stupid.
Yeah, that you think is stupid.
I think a lot of people don't know. That use the phrase. I think most people probably don't know, or they heard it has something to do with a cult and they don't know like the specifics of it. Maybe.
Yeah, you're right. I just assume everyone knows because they're like us.
I think there's a lot of people that have no idea. They just know that don't drink the Kool-Aid is like a saying.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. But that's where it came from. Like, it literally came from this.
I mean, it is dark when you think about it. You're like, yeah, that's really messed up.
It is really messed up because it's not it's not used in a serious way as a warning. It's usually just like kind of like
a snarky way.
It's a snarky thing for sure. And then, as I mentioned, you got the reply guy.
Actually, it was Flavor Aid.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, there's so much more. I just had to end it somewhere. As I mentioned, there's a lot of conspiracies. There's so much more information online if you want to do the more deep dive into all of that.
I think it was a deep dive, Desi. I think you did
a pretty
deep dive. This is obviously a horrific story. I'm thoroughly bummed out now, but you did a great job.
Sorry.
No,
but
don't
thank
be
you.
sorry.
I know it was hard. That's why I was kind of struggling, I think. I was like, oh my God, it's like to go into the details and there's so many
awful.
There's so much more about the final day. I just was going to not go too deep into that because we get it.
Yeah.
But there's obviously more testimony from survivors, etc. But yeah, I will try to find that link to that Patreon episode.
Oh, it was a Patreon episode.
It was a Patreon episode. Yep.
That must have been a while ago.
It was. It was funny because when I was reading about this, I was like, concerned relatives. I was like, wait. What? I did an episode that was related to that. And I was
on
like,
Patreon.
Shit. Yeah. So I'll find the Patreon and kind of link it.
Well, speaking of Patreon, if you want something lighter to wash down that episode.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't
no pun
say
intended.
Wash down. I didn't mean it like that, Desi.
I know.
Oh, I'm like so upset. I meant if you want something to like
a lighter
fare
story.
After this really sad story, we just uploaded a few different new episodes on Patreon.
Yeah.
I really liked our story about Sausage Kings.
We got Sausage Kings. We have an SVU recap up.
Yeah.
We have some scary ghost story.
I haven't uploaded
Oh, you
that
haven't
yet.
done that?
I'm
That's
waiting.
coming.
That's coming in a couple days.
You can get all cozy and listen to that this week coming up.
Well, that one kind of ends sad too.
Oh, so well,
it's more sentimental sad.
It's not the same as this sad.
Yeah.
It's more, yeah.
Look, we have some palate cleansers for you on Patreon.
Plan your journey.
Right.
Plan your journey with a palate cleanser.
And next week, I have something much lighter.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Good.
So
we need it.
We'll have some laughs next week.
Okay, cool. Well, that's that. I'll post some pics. I won't post the graphic ones, but some other ones.
Yeah, no graphic pictures.
You can find them easily if you need to.
That's not for our page.
Yes.
On Instagram.
Okay. Bye.